All right, good afternoon. I'm going to call the first meeting to order. This is a special called Villa Rica Redevelopment Agency meeting. And we will, so pull out that agenda and we will, I'll ask for an adoption of that agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion to adopt the agenda for the special called Villa Rica Redevelopment Agency and a second. All in favor? Okay, we have adopted the agenda. We'll move to A1, appointments of the chairman and the vice chairman. I see that there are no motions before us. The typical procedure would be that someone would make a motion to appoint the mayor as the chairman and the mayor pro tem as the vice chairman. And
That's correct. I think under the typical procedure that we followed with the Public Facilities Authority has been for the mayor to serve as the chair and the mayor pro tem as the vice chair of the authority also, just to simplify things.
are there any other offices that need to be filled
No,
at this
those are
time?
the only two.
Okay. Do I have a motion for that?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I have a motion to appoint the mayor as the chairman and the mayor pro tem as the vice chairman for the Villa Rica Redevelopment Agency. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Have a second. All in favor? That's unanimous. We have now made the appointments of the chair and vice chair. Let's move to A2, submission of the redevelopment plan from the redevelopment agency to the city council. Does this require a vote? I would
vote.
entertain a motion to make this
Yeah.
submission. Can someone make a motion to submit
I'll make a motion to submit the redevelopment plan,
to the city council?
to the city council.
Do I have a second? I have a motion to submit the redevelopment plan from the redevelopment agency to the city council, and I have a second. All in favor?
That's kind of a
That's
squirmy
unanimous.
thing, isn't it?
Sir?
We presented it ourselves, okay.
Well, we put ourselves in this position. Okay, is there anything further? Mr. Mecklin?
No, nothing
Barber.
else.
All right, hearing nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? We have adjourned the Villa Rica Redevelopment Agency meeting. All right, we will move right into the December 3rd work session of the mayor and council. Let me make some modifications to our agenda to start with. I'm going to add an A4, a discussion item for parking on Edge Road.
That's what I emailed you today.
I am also going to add do you want to put this on here for anything today?
I think we should, just to have it in the work session.
Okay, where do you want to put it under?
City manager.
Okay, so let's add an F4, which will be the discussion, and we will set a special called meeting for the adoption of the redevelopment plan that was submitted to the city council by the Villa Rica Redevelopment Agency. So add discussion redevelopment plan as F4. Okay. All right, that being the case, I do have several items I'm going to discuss today, but I'm going to wait until we get to the end of the work session agenda to do that. So I'm going to go right on into A1, community development. Bobby Elliott, is that going to be Ron? And I believe I received an email on this just a few minutes ago. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are looking at, for A1, we're looking to withdraw this application tonight at the request of the applicant. If you remember, at our last work session meeting, the applicant asked to table this oil change facility at 77 Commerce Drive. They had a fiber optic cable that they were looking at, or that they would have to either build around or see if they can find plans to and permission from AT&T to build on top of. They now are looking to move the entire building and make major adjustments to the actual lot itself. That looks like it may be in the case of a merger of some form with the CVS lot, and continue with building the oil change facility with less variances, or other plans that they're looking at as of right now. So,
Okay. Mr. Macklin, is it more appropriate to table this item or to,
Are we involved if the applicant withdraws the
Or
application?
to
Is
Yeah,
there-
withdraw.
I think we're okay with just the applicant withdrawing it.
okay. So that being the case, then what we would need to do is do that on Tuesday night. Can we make that part of the consent agenda?
You can.
Okay. Does that do the same thing?
I think you'll be fine with just taking it off the agenda as being a withdrawn item.
So we can just leave that with the city clerk?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. Madam Clerk, did you hear that? Thank you, ma'am. All right, Ron, do you have this next one, A2?
yes, sir.
All right, RA-03-20, rezoning request for 1305 West Bankhead Highway in public hearing. Go ahead, Ron.
Yes, this is a request to rezone a 0.96 acre property that's currently zoned AG, agricultural, single family, and they're looking to zone that as SFA, single family attached. The purpose of that is to allow for a driveway for a 200-unit townhouse development that's proposed in the rear of this lot that's currently already zoned for SFA. They just don't have any access to the lot. And they're looking to potentially, based on the site plan that was submitted in the part of your packets, they're looking at potentially having approximately 3 townhouses on that lot, at probably a maximum of 3, if any at all. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is a development that would go through regardless. It's already zoned for single family attached. But what they're looking for is to unify the zoning that's out there right now, since agricultural does not permit for townhouses.
Okay, I think I understand that. Council, does anyone have any questions?
Yes, sir. Ron, so just, can we, before Tuesday night, I would like to see a little more history on the other parcels of the property, including when they were zoned, if there's any stipulations, anything like that, and, get some notion of the connection between these two properties. I don't want to, I want to be able to just see the full picture, basically, if we could.
Sure.
And I see like the site plan and all that, but, anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure. No, I just was going to say that I know that it's really limited what we did have because we rezoned that, and I'll give you background on that, but we did rezone this in August to SFA from agricultural.
Okay.
Or the previous agricultural zone, RD.
Okay,
I believe it was RD, but I'll clarify that and I'll make sure that that you all get an email with
Okay.
some background.
So this is
information
part of
on
the-
that. But
the-
there's no relation between the two lots, though, the one that's actually being requested to be rezoned and the ones that were already rezoned in the rear.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other relation between the two.
Okay.
What do you mean?
I'm not really sure why it would be single-family attached when you've got a church on one side and single-family separated homes on the other. So was there some rationale to say that this piece here should be single-family attached?
I'll have to consult with Chris, really. He's was really in charge of that rezoning from a staff's perspective, at least. However, from what I understand, there was an intent to have this as single family at some point in the past in some form, so that kind of picks up on what you want. So I'll try to clarify that for you and have it in an email.
Okay, yeah, because I think what you just said about this being a city initiated to the SFA, is that what you're, from the August, or no? Bobby shaking his head no.
Yes, absolutely.
Jeff Matthews owns the original piece in the back, and I believe in the past it was on multifamily.
Okay,
With the map change, it went to SFA because he had a prospect.
okay,
And the single-family resident up front also is owned by Jeff Matthews.
Right.
So they tried to make it homogeneous
Okay,
with a
so-
nice wide driveway going in with some nice landscaping and that kind of thing.
Okay, so on the previous ordinance, it was multifamily.
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Okay, yeah, that, I mean, that's just the kind of stuff I'm looking for,
Yeah.
right here. Just
Okay.
confirm that history.
So hold on just a second. So let's just be clear that what happened there is if it was SFA before, that is consistent with its new name now. That is
Right.
all that is different. So I want to make sure that's said. Mr. Carter?
Okay, if we don't do anything about this little parcel, he'll just put a driveway through it, and he won't put any buildings on, is that the way it goes?
That's correct.
We
Mhm.
just leave it alone, it makes it a driveway and some green space.
That's correct. Mhm.
Essentially,
I
yeah.
like that better.
Well, we're going to have a public hearing on Tuesday. So are there any other questions for staff?
I have another question, I'm
Yes, sir,
sorry.
go
And
ahead.
s-
Sure.
And so I guess my next question is, and this might be more of a Mr. Mecklin question, but what is, I guess, the efficacy of council desiring to put stipulations on this property and their application to the adjoining properties that I've already zoned, even if the developer agrees to them?
Normally, you would not be able to do that. I mean, you can't put conditions on the rezoning of a particular piece of property that apply to adjacent pieces of property.
Right. Okay.
And if you get the developer to agree to it in the form of a development agreement, that would be binding as a contract, but as a zoning condition, I don't think you can do it.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? All right, like I said, this item is going to have a public hearing on Tuesday, so we will not place it on the consent agenda. I would ask that you follow up with the information requested by the councilman, and we will have that information on Tuesday. All right, let's move on to A3, 400 Development Regulations, Section 403.11 wastewater lift stations. Mr. Elliott, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a large addition into, or replacement into the Section 400 of the development regulations. The first, I guess, 3 pages down to item 7, from there on are specifications that are currently in our sewer specifications. We just updated them. Everything up to that point, in the past, Villa Rica has allowed development to build lift stations to serve only their development. Hence, we have 32 of those. This change sets policy that the developer has to look at the basin as a whole and design his lift station to serve more than just his development. Almost all major utilities in the metro area are doing something like this, and I don't know why we haven't had something like this in the past, but it's kind of technical. It gives footage requirements. You know, they have to run gravity sewer down to a point up to 10,000 feet, which that's not going to apply here pretty much for anything that we have. But what this will do is on new developments where they don't have gravity sewer accessible, they've got to do a lift station. This policy will necessitate a development agreement between the city of Villa Rica, the developer, and possibly a couple other, 1 or 2 other property owners that may want to access this along the way. But it gives us the latitude to assess, I guess, pro rata share of the cost of these stations. And there'll be cases where the city will kick in some dollars if we want the station to go even further down basin than the policy requires. So it's a good thing to do to kind of, number one, remove some existing stations where we can and share some costs on new ones.
Well, let me say that in in theory and on paper, let's say it like that, I fully support this idea. But now I have expressed my concerns regarding property owners not immediately impacted, but down the road impacted. Have you addressed that in this ordinance?
We have not addressed it in this particular ordinance. I think where we would address that would be in the development agreements that Mr. Elliott was talking about. I mean, the concept is that if the city determines that we need a particular type of infrastructure placed in to service a new subdivision, and we want it built in such a way that it will also service the potential future new subdivisions, that we would, the city would see that infrastructure got built. We would assess the cost to the particular applicant who's building a subdivision, what his pro rata share of that would be, and then reserve the right down the road when the next person comes in and wants to hook onto that infrastructure, to that sewer, that we'd have the ability to assess them a cost also.
So how do we guarantee, though, if we don't have a written procedure for it, that everybody gets treated fairly in that scenario? In other words, a developer comes in, he crosses two parcels, he takes advantage of the deal, we do whatever plan we do for him, and then later on, those other two parcels are treated fairly in how they're able to come onto that system. Without a policy, I don't see how we guarantee that going forward, and I would like to
Yeah, I
to see
think
that.
you're right. We do need to have a policy that's going to set forth how those costs are going to be divided, and we don't have that yet.
And I absolutely agree that this is the right way to move forward for us. Part of my concern is that we do not sort of, push developers out because of prohibitive cost, and that we have a plan to make sure that whatever funds are expended are required fairly amongst the parcels impacted. Okay, council, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Young?
I was just saying, does not having a policy prohibit us from moving forward on this? Or can we put together a policy quickly enough, since we're going to have a special called meeting, apparently? Can we put together a policy quickly enough?
Mr. Macklin?
Yeah, not by Tuesday night, we cannot.
Well,
That's fair, but at the same time, it's not overly complicated.
Right, I
We've
agree with that.
discussed it
We can
with
do
some-
it, we can do it quickly. I
Can we
just
afford
want
to take 30 days to come up with a policy and do it at the next scheduled council meeting? And would that be acceptable?
Bobby, talk to me about the time frame that you need. Is there something pending? Because there's a lot of things going on.
Mayor, we have a project in the mill right now that this very policy is going to affect.
Okay. Can you make an effort, Mr. Macklin, to have that ready for us by Tuesday, something? And if not, we'll move it. But I'm not going to put it on the consent agenda anyway.
For Tuesday, I'll try, but
Okay.
I mean, it's not a simple policy.
But it's not overly complicated, but I understand what you're saying. I just don't think I want to move forward with this, and I suspect no one does if it
Right.
is not complete. Yes, sir.
Where the complicating factor is not going to come in for the initial developer, because it's easy for us to assess what his pro rata share should be, because we know what he would have had to have spent to just service his development. The more complicated part is figuring out how you prorate it for the people down the road that are coming in later to hook into the system that's already been built.
That's exactly right. Is this first system, is it one that crosses multiple parcels?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we need it. Mr. Barber, I think do you have a question or comment?
So let's take an example where the developer, in order to service his new neighborhood, would have to spend $800,000 to put in a lift station and a force main and the gravity line. And we prefer that a lift station be built to handle a basin, which is just multiple parcels. So let's say that cost $1.5 million. So what I would envision is that we would require the developer to pay us the $800,000 that he would have expended, and then we would pay the $1.5 million. We would build and do the engineering and everything. The question is the mechanism of that second piece, and what would make sense to me, were it legal, would be to create a small sewer infrastructure district that included just those parcels and assign a cost to it, and then do some kind of allocation based on the number of users that you're hooking on it. One of the things that it does to us is it makes us responsible for estimating the total requirement of the basin without knowing, right? We're gonna know how many parcels, but we're not gonna know the use or the density or the flows or anything. We're just gonna guess at all that. What we have found from talking to Douglas is that they, in this situation, don't do anything on the back end. So the first guy comes in, he pays his $800,000, they do $1.5 million to build whatever, and everybody after that is the benefactor.
I don't like that.
Yeah, but
Well,
Yeah,
it also
he is.
discourages him from even doing the
right,
project.
but those guys have been in the business a long time. And if that's the way they're doing it, the question is, do we have the demand that somebody would come in here? Because the first guy is not disincentivized by our arrangement with the subsequent guys, right? He's gonna pay $800,000
One way or the other.
Yeah.
regardless of what the guy after
that's
him
true.
gets or doesn't get. See what I'm saying? So anyway, so.
That's for
it's-
him, but now the city has a role
Yeah.
that we've now taken on the chin.
Yeah, we're the ones that pay in
I
that
understand,
case.
and I also
right?
want to be
We
fair
don't
to the
get-
city.
We don't get any additional, but we're still gonna get tap fees,
Right, we're gonna get those anyway.
right?
Tom, why not use the same formula you did for the first one? Parcel A comes in, it's $800,000. So then parcel B comes in, and if parcel B had a lift station that served only parcel B, you have that cost, and so therefore, now that's their contribution to the 1.5 million. And then parcel C comes in, and you do the same.
David can look at that and see if
Yeah.
that's,
I think that would be the
Legal.
the goal, to come up with some sort of system like that, so that the subsequent developers are not just getting a free ride.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
it's just that price and lift stations is not David's forte. So for him to get up to speed on that by Tuesday with a policy, and it's not really gonna impact what we do with this first guy,
Okay.
right?
Well, he says that it does, that the first one involves multiple parcels. So it
Well, I
does
mean-
impact him.
Well, I mean, we're gonna give him the $800,000 quote,
Regardless.
right? Regardless of what the back end piece
Are
of
you
this is.
suggesting to me that we should go ahead and pass this as it is now, but have David work this formula
No,
and
I
modify
think we
it?
need to
Okay.
wait till January.
All right. Anybody have any
But
other? Yes, sir.
What our experience has been is if we don't bring something like this, then we don't have this conversation and we don't get direction, and then David doesn't have direction, and then we wind up in January, and then we have this conversation, and then we're in February,
Hey,
right? So when Bobby and I talked about this, I said, yeah, I know we're not probably ready for what council's gonna want, but we need to bring it so we can start this process of.
No objection. I have no objection to that. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yes. So
Yes, ma'am.
Bobby, if this one's in the middle of it, is it going to be a problem if we do this in January?
No, what Tom previously quoted, we've got, we're gonna quote this developer a fee based on the analysis that we've done.
Okay.
And that's gonna
So
come.
we're fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Just for clarification, when I was reading these fun 25 pages, some of it, if it's not your area of expertise, but it sounded like, and I'm not sure, it's not redlined, so I'm not, what got added in here or got changed. It sounds like we're trying to be strategic in where they place the lift station, everything else. Is that right? Is that what I was understanding while I was reading this?
We have.
Because we want it to be gravity fed if,
We have to stop
No.
allowing lift stations for every single subdivision that's being built, and that's what we've done in the
Got that.
past. Look at more globally basin-wise, where one lift station will take care of what we have installed 3 to do in the past.
and I appreciate that right there, because I think for the public, we needed more clarification on that. Okay, so you have 32 lift stations, why does that matter? Because we've got 32 with parts with something to go wrong, and it just,
Electricity.
yeah. So this will be more efficient and
Where I
maybe less time-consuming when it comes to repairs and everything else, instead of having lift stations
Where I
all over
come
the
from,
place.
there's no such thing as a good lift station.
It's better if you don't need it, right? And everything's
Yeah.
going downhill, okay.
But see, we can't do that because this is our topography.
Right.
And
How we see it.
I-20 and 78 and the railroad are sort of the peak of that, and we flow downhill to the north and downhill to the south. So you don't do gravity, over the peak. So
Okay.
that's
All
our
right.
dilemma.
Are there any other questions on this item? I'm going to leave it on here for Tuesday night. We're not going to do anything with it. We'll see if Mr. Mecklen works magic or not. All right, let's move on, Bobby. Hang out right there. We're going to hit A4. Mr. Carter would like to discuss parking on Edge Road real quickly, and I know you already are looking at it, but let's get some information.
I think we need to do a guardrail. We've had that area surveyed where the right-of-way is. We've
Right.
got that already established. So putting
We
sign,
own a large portion of that parking space on the south side of Edge Road on
putting
top of the hill.
as Tom will attest, putting signs up does not deter a tractor trailer. It
And
just
not even
doesn't.
if you put no parking anytime, you put
It
4 or
doesn't
5
matter.
across there, they gotta
So-
run over them.
Yes, they do regularly.
That's what happens at the industrial park.
So
Complete
we need to put something up that we can paint, like a guardrail. We can paint yellow or whatever and just,
Prevent them from parking
Yeah.
there.
All right, well, let's talk about
Okay,
this.
right now, the problem is, and Ward 5 is a quiet ward, I don't get complaints. I'm getting complaints. So right now, you got a problem. I know I've encountered it twice, headed west, coming across the top of that hill.
yeah.
People, the semi trucks are parked over there on top of the hill.
Gotta
and
go around.
They're
And
sticking
you
out
go
into
the
Edge
other lane.
Road.
Yeah.
So the people going eastbound have to move over across the lane into the westbound lane. I've encountered a couple of people doing that, and I have to leave the road to avoid hitting them. My wife's encountered it, and I've had a lot of complaints now about people. Those trucks are always parked there, those semi trucks. So it's not working the way it is. It's been that way a long time.
Okay, we know the problem over there. Here's my question. How much of that space of each of those parking spaces belongs to the right-of-way, and how much of it belongs to the property owner?
like half, wasn't it?
I can't quote exactly because I'm getting old and I can't rewind that. It's been about 3 months since we had it surveyed, but I'll have
It's
it.
roughly half?
It's half.
It's half. Is there any objection, has there been any delay because of the impact to that other half of the parking space? Or is it just simply a matter of we need to get it authorized and funded?
We just need to get it cranked.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave this item on the agenda for Tuesday, and I would like you to bring us back some pricing
Okay.
for that.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Bobby. We're gonna move on to B, Economic Development. Ms. Chumley, number 1 is 2020 Main Street Advisory Board reappointments.
Good
Thank you, ma'am.
afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have a 7-member Main Street Advisory Board that's appointed by the City Council. Their duties are to promote the program and advise and support the Main Street Manager through the collaboration of 4 standing committees, which are organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality. And also the board works to promote the downtown central business district. Currently, we have 6 members that need to be reappointed. In the past, the Main Street Advisory Board has never had staggered terms. After speaking with the city attorney, we have worked to create the staggered terms between the 6 that need to be reappointed, and after speaking with them in our November monthly meeting, those folks chose whether they wanted to do a 2 or 3 year term. These are as follows, the reappointment terms that we're recommending. For 2 year terms, by the way, their current term expires 12/31 of this end of this year, 20. So Rhonda McCullers, we're recommending 2 year terms for Rhonda McCullers, Julie Moore, and Carolyn Cox, with expiring terms of 12/31/22. And the 3 year terms, Carl Peabody, Melissa Garrett, and Stephanie Warmoth at 12/31/23.
Okay, so let me ask you, on the 2 year terms, those folks would have expired at December 31st of 2020? Is that correct? So essentially, we are reappointing those to 2 more years in order to this is a housekeeping issue just to get
Correct.
Yes.
these terms staggered?
Yes.
Okay, but those would actually have expired in a couple of weeks, but they're wishing to be reappointed, and you're making that recommendation
Correct.
here. All right,
Yes, sir.
council, does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. This is all clear. Well, I understand exactly why you're doing that. We've done that with every other board. There's 7-member board, there's 6. So either there's somebody who's not expiring or there's an empty seat. Well, you currently have 6.
One is not expiring, and that is Bradford Hegler, and his does not expire until next year.
So he's out there by himself?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, but you have a full board?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, if there are no objections, I'll make this consent item 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to Human Resources. Ms. Stephanie Rooks. Item C1 is Personnel Policies Update.
Good
ma'am.
afternoon, Mayor and Council. Bringing back the policy handbook for your approval. The changes, you have the changes that we made to demotion, tuition reimbursement, and then we added several new policies. The email policy, a clean desk policy, which basically states don't leave anything on your desk that is personal information that somebody could just look at and find. Security awareness and training for IT, and then the incentive pay. We have modified the incentive pay just this afternoon. I have given you a copy of that. Previously, there was not a calculation parameters in the policy, and we have added those in. So we changed it from, we actually put the calculation will be based on a 50% of the previous fiscal year's net savings in the self-funded insurance plan. The pay that a person would receive is $300 per full-time employee and $150 per part-time employee. That is the maximum. It could be less than that.
Right, those are the caps. Okay, all right, thank you, Stephanie. Council, does anyone have any questions for Stephanie? If there are no questions, I will, Mr. Young, do you have a question? Okay, I will place this item as consent item 2.
Oh, wait a
Agreed.
second.
You have a question?
I don't
Okay.
have a question. It's more of a comment. You know, I have an issue with us, with citizens, taxpayers paying for tuition for city employees. I won't restate what I have already restated in its entirety last month, but I'll also add that I thought it was interesting that, you know, we do undergraduate, we do graduate programs. We reimburse a graduate program if you get a C, 50% up to 500. I don't know how it is exactly now, but there were times in graduate programs, if you got a C, you got no credit.
You do get credit, but you
Okay.
have to make up. In most programs, you have to have an A to make up for the C to make it a B. But graduate tuition is more expensive than undergraduate tuition
Mm-hmm.
per credit hour.
But we'll still pay 50% up to 500 for a C in a
That's
graduate
That's the
program.
recommendation,
Okay.
and it's just consistent with the undergrad recommendation.
Okay.
Let me just ask a question, though. I recall, at least in the discussions, that we would not pay for the same class twice. Is that
Correct.
correct? So even if they had to go back to get the A, to get the credit, they wouldn't get reimbursed the second time.
The second time, correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I don't know where everyone else stands on this. I haven't been talking to everybody behind the scenes, asking them, you know, how do you feel about this? But I would be willing to make a motion on Tuesday to take the tuition reimbursement policy, to remove that from the handbook. And so I guess I'll have to find out if anybody else feels that way.
Are you indicating an objection to the consent item?
Yes.
Okay. So this item will not be placed on the consent agenda.
No, it's not going to be.
I am on camera.
I have a mask on.
All right.
Tell them that.
I have to be more serious. All right.
Okay, then.
So that item will come back on Tuesday. Let's move on to C2, proposed 2021 holiday schedule.
Okay, you have in front of you the proposed holiday schedule. We, as a city, observe 12 paid holidays per year. To get holiday pay, you must be in pay status before and after the holiday. Pay status being you can be working, you can be on sick leave or vacation or your personal leave. Okay, so you're getting paid for those other days. But you must have pay status before and after the holiday to qualify.
Okay. Council, you've had an opportunity to review that schedule. It's 12 days, is that correct?
Yes.
12 holiday schedules, pay days. Council, does anyone have any questions? All right, if there are no questions, I will make that consent item 2. All right, Stephanie, let's move on to 3, changes to the network within the health plan.
Okay, I just wanted to let you guys know that since we added a network for the hospitals this time and not just for the physicians, that there are penalties for going outside of network. Penalties being you would pay more. Also, Northside is specifically excluded from our network again. So you have in front of you the differences in the co-pays and premiums, and not premiums, but your co-pays and your deductibles.
So I'm going to ask you a question because I don't know the answer to this. Do you have meetings with staff and employees to advise them of the upcoming changes before they come here and what impact that might have to them? I'm going to give you a personal experience. I have little say unless I spend a good amount of time working with my doctor about where my labs go or where procedures happen. I had a procedure done a couple of years ago, and I never went to Northside Hospital. But
that's
before
where
I
you're-
knew it, I had a number of Northside bills. My concern is that we have some type of communication or information to these employees so they understand how they're impacted and how they can mitigate that impact. Do you do that?
During our open enrollment meetings, we do.
Okay. Because I think this needs to be really explained to people. We are not all experts on insurance,
Correct.
and there's a lot of learning that needs to happen, and I want to make sure that is being done on a regular basis. It's not just at open enrollment, but obviously, as you're making these decisions and you're asking us to make changes to these plans, that is the time to make sure that these employees are getting that information.
Right.
I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that this system is complicated, and
It
people
is.
need help. And we have them working full-time jobs. They don't have time to go into a class on how to understand their insurance.
Right.
So, all right, council, does anybody have any questions on this?
Do you have anything to add to that, Tom? I mean, you looked like you did.
Well, let me.
Okay, all
Does
right.
council have anybody have any questions?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Are we actively working on ways to save money in this instance? Because I know we've talked about this a little bit. Shopping around, right? Most people aren't going to shop around if somebody else is paying for it. You're like, oh, it's time to go get the mammogram. I'm going over to Tanner to get it done, or whatever it is. A lot of times, certain things, certain scans, MRIs, things like that are a lot more in a hospital than they are in a facility that just does those sort of tests. Are we accumulating that information, attempting to do it, gathering information when people go, because nobody's going to go call 10 places. I can't believe how much time I spent one time just trying to shop. And I was only doing it because I thought it'll save money. It's, I mean, hundreds different sometime between going to two different places.
We are not shopping around because usually the employee wants to make the decisions as to who their doctor is. That's not our place to say, oh, well, you need to go see so-and-so because he's cheaper.
No,
You
no,
know,
no. Yeah,
and-
but
I
that's
think-
not what I'm talking
Hold
about.
on just a second. I think she's talking about educating as
Right.
opposed to trying to direct.
And we
Go
did,
ahead. I'll let you clarify what you said. I just,
Yeah, number one, we're not talking about doctors at all. We're talking about
are.
an MRI or something like that. And just people knowing, well, gosh, I pay a percentage of this, it'll be right? Are we not trying to encourage people to go to the emergency walk-in before they go to the emergency room? We're not making anybody do anything, but hey, think about that first because of how much it costs.
right, but we don't know, the difference between Wellstar and Tanner. Wellstar charges a lot more than Tanner. Tanner writes everything off, Wellstar doesn't. So in a large situation like that, when I see the balanced bills, I can encourage people to go somewhere else.
well, I like that. I understand that you don't have a crystal ball. You're not gonna be able to anticipate.
Right.
But what you can do, I think, and you may be doing, I'm not suggesting you're not because I don't know, is have sort of like a cheat sheet where you are giving information to employees without getting into their
Personal stuff.
I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be proactive to help our employees. And if you think about how that incentive plan that we just talked about, I see him shaking his head. I'll get him in a minute. When you think about that, that is a way for them to directly impact how they might receive an end of year incentive. And I think they would want to be a part of that. So be thinking about ways to be creative to help our staff. Tom, did you have anything?
Yeah, I know what you're after, and to do it because of turnover and just the fact that people don't come to meetings and they don't pay attention when they do come, and when it gets right down to needing to remember the information, they don't, we could probably meet with the employees once a month and say the same thing every month.
And we did that for a while.
And probably still not do what you want, which is to actually convey it, right? I mean, but I agree that we could do a lot better just because of turnover. What's a new person do? They don't even see open enrollment,
There's
right,
no-
until the following November of their hire,
Yeah.
right? So, well, they know.
There's no question that it could be complicated, that it will be imperfect, but it also gives that opportunity for folks to interact with HR and ask a question that maybe they'd been putting off. If you did it before, do it again, and let's see what we can
Yeah,
get
we
out of
haven't
it.
done it since I haven't done it.
Okay, well, let's
You
do it
haven't
again.
done, but we
You have
had
a question?
Grant do
All right,
it.
hold on, Mr.
There-
Carter's got a question. Go
I
ahead.
noticed that North Side is still excluded. They're the only ones excluded?
Yes.
Yes.
And what's the problem with North Side?
They will not take discounts, or it's very minimal at that. It's like a 10% discount off of bill, and they charge you like 1,000% of Medicare.
Or more.
more.
Or 2,000 or 3,000.
And they've refused to negotiate.
Yes.
Okay.
Every
And
time.
they're the only one
They
and
offer
only.
us a 5% discount.
North Side.
Oh,
Stay
I
away
thought
from
it
North
was
Side.
another.
Or some, or, whatever.
So we stay away from North Side.
Well, we want to.
Yeah.
Just like we want to stay away from the ER. Doesn't mean sometimes it's not appropriate. Sometimes you're going to have to go to North Side, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes you don't know that that's what happened. Mr. Young.
In your case.
like I say, we're mostly talking about procedures and services, not who your doctor is or what hospital you go to, but things that you have to schedule, an MRI, a mammogram, things like that. So can we have a list of preferred providers for these expensive kind of tests that gets updated once a year or whatever if the provider changes?
I don't know that we'd go preferred providers, but we can do providers.
Well,
Because
here-
I may prefer somebody else that I don't know.
Well, I'm just
is-
saying, whoever's,
Well, I think I think what he's talking about when he talks about preferred is where we know we get the best pricing from and where we've not heard complaints or something like that.
That's-
You're positioned,
That's not really what AIM does, which is the organization that we contract with that advises us on where to go. Theirs is about quality. you know, you gotta have a colonoscopy, who's the best guy?
Well, preferred means that you weigh a number of,
I don't really think
Criteria.
that that's in that the contract gets into, maybe I'm
Under
wrong,
that,
but
the
I
only
don't
reason
think,
you go to Northside is if you had a high-risk pregnancy. That's the only thing they're good at in the metro area.
okay.
But
All right,
yeah,
does anybody have
we'll
any
work
other,
on that.
any other discussion on this? Because this item does not require any action. We're just getting some discussion out. And Stephanie, I appreciate you bringing this to us for us to have an opportunity to look at. And
Yes.
it may sound like a lot's going on, but we don't get to do this often.
Right.
We could, but we just don't bring it up enough. So I appreciate you
Okay.
bringing it to us and helping us. And I hope maybe some of these constructive ideas you can take back and find a way to implement it.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Pete. I know he can't wait to get up here. D1, request for engineering services identified as addendum number 10 to the water treatment plant improvements. Go ahead, Pete.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Mayor, if you would permit me to make a very brief introduction before I do the first item. I'd like to introduce to you all Mr. John Bain. He's our new Deputy Director of Utilities, and he started Monday of this week. So
Well, welcome.
Or-
I saw you sitting out there, and I thought, who in the world is this? We finally got a visitor. Thought I was going to ask somebody to give him a piece of candy or something and invite him back. Well, good to meet you. Thank you for being here. I'll try to meet you outside of here at some point. Go ahead, Pete.
thank you. The first item that I have is referring to the water main extension along Liberty Road, which would go across I-20 at the exit 26 and along Mirror Lake Boulevard to Connors Road. As you're aware, we've talked many times before about trying to loop our system north and south, and this would complete a leg from, once we complete the Edge Road project, which is currently underway, we'll pick up at Liberty and Edge Road and go across the bridge to the other side with a 10 or 12 inch line. And I say either or because we prefer to take a 12 inch across the bridge, but we may be limited to what DOT will permit us to hang on the bridge. They have some prior cutouts to accommodate lines to go across the bridge, but we may be just limited to 10. I don't know until we explore that a little bit further. We're recommending to do this. This is a request for engineering services to do this work, to do the project administration coordination, field surveying and utility locates, engineering and design, permitting and approvals, assist us with the bidding process, and also construction phase services and oversight during construction. The staff is recommending engaging Carter and Sloop for these engineering services for the water main extension along Liberty Road, across I-20, along Mirror Lake Boulevard to Connors Road in an amount not to exceed $43,500. And this is not a budgeted item.
Right, I saw that it's not a budgeted item. Why does this item come before us now when we just approved the budget? Is there some reason why this item? I want you to tell everybody.
Okay. Come on, Sarah, help me out here.
Hand her a microphone, Alyssa.
I would just say, I think this has come up since the budget process. Is that correct? I mean, the budget was adopted September 29th, but y'all were seeing a version that was created a month prior to that too. So, not to say the budget's old, but I'm about to bring you a whole 2 pages of budget amendments. So, I don't know any more specifics as to when this came up, but
Well, tell us a little bit about why this is needed right now, Pete, and couldn't have been anticipated for the budget, I guess is what I would like people to hear, because $43,500 in unbudgeted money for utilities, usually there's an emergency. Usually there's something that has caused that.
Well, Tom, you're gonna have to help me out over here since you're over here laughing.
Well, I mean, we have talked about the concept of doing this ever since I got here. If you remember, for those of you who've been here the whole time that I've been here, we're looking to put in place a grid of 12-inch pipe, right? East and west, north and south, one side to the other, connecting the tanks and all that. And we don't have that. So you've approved an extension on 61 out at the hospital. You've approved Edge Road. We're getting close to bringing you North Avenue, which will be huge, right? It's going to connect Don Rich Ford and Olive Tree, where we went under the railroad, out to, out North Avenue to 61, where we just did the extension. So, I mean, we've been talking about this. We're just now getting to it. So basically, you're getting it when we get it, right?
So
Okay, so
Mayor-
hold on a second. So in summary, what you're saying is these are projects we'd been looking at. We didn't anticipate that we'd be able to get to them, but now we're gonna be able to get to them. And it's over $110,000 or $20,000, these next three projects altogether that are all unbudgeted that he's about to present. But essentially what it is we were talking about doing these things. We were gonna do them, but you didn't think we'd get to them this fast?
No, it's just we didn't get to them fast enough to get them in the budget. But this project is going to be a multi-year deal, right? Just like Edge Road and just like North Avenue. We're going to have to engineer it for a long time. Then we got to do GDOT permitting. Then we got to get in their schedule. Carter Sloop are the guys that are doing the water plant, so that's their first priority. So this isn't even their priority, right? I mean, they're sort of getting around to when they can get around to it. Pete's getting around to it when he can get around to it, right? I mean, we're just bringing it to you as fast as we can, and this is as quick as we can get to it.
And
All
the
right, well,
enterprise.
Hold on a second, Mr. Young.
Okay, so when I look at most of the items you bring like these, I'm like a yes, yes, and yes. And the reason I'm a yes is because we've talked about it for years. We're going to do this, but the reason I was laughing is because we've talked about it for years, and I can't figure out how we didn't anticipate that we were gonna do this 2 months ago. So that's the part that throws me off is, yeah, we need to do this. We need to have already done this. Okay, I'm glad we're gonna do it, but we had no idea to even have any idea on the budget that we were going to be looking at this in a couple months. That's what I don't get.
Because this works off the back end of Edge Road, which we're just now doing. So I wouldn't want them to be designing this until Edge Road got built, so that they're working off of
right,
as-built.
let's
Does
let
the
Mr.
fact
Young
that the
ask the question.
enterprise fund is finally solvent and we have the money to do it play into the timing?
Yeah, I mean, we got $5 million in cash.
Yeah, but it went, okay,
And we're gonna spend it on these projects.
okay, so the budget amendments are coming later. I looked through those, they're in there. It says it's coming out of, fund balance. So is that out of the enterprise fund? Because I'm always looking at that as our savings account. Is it the savings account in a sense for everything or just the general fund?
Just the
Because-
enterprise fund,
Just enterprise.
So it is coming out of the enterprise fund?
right.
Okay,
Yes, so in the with the 3 years of the intense rate increases, not only did we get it ready for the increased bond payment, but we were also preparing for these capital projects that we knew were coming. So that's how we built up to $5 million that we are now about to spend.
We're getting ready to do our first GFA application for North Avenue. And when we do, and they look at us, and they see cash in the bank, and that y'all been willing to raise rates, what's their underwriting gonna say? This is a good,
It's solvent.
it's a good risk,
Gotcha.
right?
and we're
You're
gonna give them
making-
free
You're making the
money,
necessary decisions.
almost.
You're not just billing it, but you're collecting it, right? I mean, we have gone from being a bad debt risk, right? We were a bad debt risk 4 years ago. You understand what I mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
If you were the underwriter looking at us, going, man, do I want to loan them $2.5 million? I mean, we're subsidizing out of the general fund and out of SPLOST, and we're not doing maintenance, and I mean, we weren't a good risk. And we are now, and it's because of what y'all have done.
Well, I think we all are on those pages, and we know that. We're really referring to items that are unbudgeted and substantial and just outside of the budget period. I understand what you're saying, and obviously we want to move forward on them. I just want to make sure that it was understood by everybody why we're doing this and why they're not budgeted.
So can we
You
have
want to say something else?
Yes, can we have a conversation on budgeting for contingency, like this kind of stuff, allowing us to budget for a professional type projects that may be unknown, but we expect them? I mean, how do y'all
I
feel
don't have
about
any
that?
problem with that if that's what you want to do.
But like a blanket amount, $300,000, $500,000, I mean.
If you think you have projects that are anticipated and they are possible, even if not likely, I don't mind you trying to present that. It doesn't mean it's going to get passed, but there's some logic to it.
Definitely.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking budget way ahead, 4 months, 6 months from when things could happen,
Listen,
a year.
And you know, while you're talking about that, there's no question that when we looked at that budget, we knew that we needed the increases that we put in place. We knew that those things were going to happen, but I had people say, wait a minute, it doesn't look like you needed that money. Well, this is a prime example of why it would have looked better in the budget, showing that we were going to try to spend that money on the improvements and upgrades that were needed. But if you didn't know you were going to be able to do them, I'm with you. I get that.
And the 43 is not the money. The construction is the money.
Well, we know that. This is
Right?
the planning.
And all of these are gonna be like that. You're gonna get a 10% engineering component and then a 90% construction component, so.
Okay, we seem to have a sole source going on here, Carter Sleuth. Is that the only engineering firm we deal with?
No, it's not. We've got several, but this is a very large
And that's no relation, by the way. I don't own that company. So. I wish I did.
No, these are the guys that are doing our water, though. Brennan primarily is doing sewer, and these guys are primarily doing water. We've used another water guy who we turned out we didn't like, so we've discontinued him. We tried using the guy. I mean, you know, y'all have seen them all. You know, Paul, we brought in here to help us with the north plant. We decided that wasn't going to be our priority, so we sort of put that on hold. So, I mean, we've been bringing in guys and trying them to see who fits Pete, who fits me, you know, who can pick up the city fastest, and
Well,
I
there's a
think
benefit
this
to
company
that.
did, huh?
and these guys are doing well.
There's a benefit to that institutional knowledge too that comes with these guys having been familiar with our system.
Yeah.
While I in principle agree that we need to make sure that we're looking at other vendors and contractors, there's certainly reason to say we're going to stick with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 or 10 years from now, I would really like to think that these guys, that y'all are still using them, because that's going to be 5 or 10 years of institutional knowledge, right? Because, you know, Pete and I are going to be gone, Bobby's going to be gone, and somebody's needs to be here that knows something.
Well, I totally
Right.
agree that it's good to have someone reliable that you can count on and all that, as long as the pricing,
Yeah,
as long as you're making sure the pricing from them is not way above
Right.
what we could get elsewhere from a reasonable company.
Okay, are there any objections to this being consent 3?
No.
All right, let's move on. D2, request for engineering services identified as addendum number 13 to the water treatment plant improvements. Pete?
Okay, this, got the wrong one. This one refers to the water system evaluation and planning for the Avamore development. And it's my understanding that things are moving along fairly quickly with the Avamore development. And the scope of this engineering service would be for data collection, engineering evaluation, and then recommendations that they make. So they would be taking a look at all the existing water lines in that region, actually, and not only accommodating Avamore, but any other development that may happen around that area. There's also been some discussion of moving our 400,000 gallon Carrollton Road tank, which happens to be at the top of the mountain in the middle of this development, which I know the developer would like that tank removed. In the event that we had to move that, we have to resize the tank for larger capacity to be able to absorb the development and the expected demand that would generate. Also, the relocation of the tank is, we're going to have to take a hard look at that because it's kind of a self-contained pressure zone. The overflow elevation for Mirror Lake tank and the Hickory level tank are at the same elevation, but the elevation of the Carrollton Road tank is about 70 feet higher. And so we have to be mindful where we relocate the tank so we can keep that pressure gradient where it needs to be to serve that area. So that's kind of the scope of the activities that the engineers will be taking a look at.
Is that we own that tank? Is that our tank?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, and that is what this whole study is going to take into consideration, all of those things. That's what you mean to say?
Yes.
That was,
Yes.
I'm losing time here. Does
Okay,
any
sorry.
other council members have any questions for Pete? No objection. I'm going to make that consent number 4.
No objection.
All right, let's move on to D3, emergency installation of fire hydrants on Edge Road. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay, when we started the laying of the line, the water line extension on Edge Road, originally it was designed with the thinking of being a dedicated transmission line, but after the contract let and we took a closer look at it, we may have to discontinue sometime in the future the line that's on the south side of Edge Road. It just seemed to be more cost effective, make more sense to go ahead while the line was being laid to add these fire hydrants.
Right.
So the amount for that is $48,500, and that was reflected in the change order request in the existing contract with the contractor.
Right, okay. All right, council, does anybody have any questions? I know you all have been familiarized with this because it came up several weeks ago. Any
I
questions?
got one question.
Mr. Carter, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
There's one fire hydrant laying out there on the road next to Edge Road. Why is it laying there?
Because they haven't picked it up. And because they're
Oh,
going to
it's not gonna be used?
It's not going to be, okay, I'm glad you asked that because the spacing for these hydrants is approximately 500 feet. So we figured 10 hydrants through the run of that line. But there was one area where we could not install a hydrant, and that's the extra hydrant that we're not going to use. So really, they're only utilizing 9 of the 10. And we're not going to be charged for that extra hydrant. That'll go back to the contractor.
And I have one other comment.
Yes, sir.
I noticed you put one fire hydrant right next to a house, which I didn't think was the appropriate thing to do. I thought they should have moved it down 20, 30 feet to get beyond the house. They put it in the front yard of that house at the intersection of,
Okay.
Talking
No,
about the one that's fenced?
we put it in the right of way.
it's in the right of way,
He's
but
just-
it's right next to the house, so.
No, but what I'm saying is the fence that there is a 17-foot encroachment into the right of way.
Right, you understand, what he's saying is why wouldn't you have just put it
Moved it
away
laterally.
from?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you never put one, I don't see them in front. They used to put between
Yeah,
houses, so.
I
That just
think it
the
just kind of
approximate
came down
five.
with the engineer that went out and marked and
They happened to
spaced
be
them
where
out.
500 feet was, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, okay, any other questions? All right, I'll make this consent C5 if there are no objections.
No
All right, let's go.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you, Pete. Sorry, that's the longest time you've ever had to stand up there. We'll try to go a little slower next time. All right, Sarah, E1, the 2020 budget amendments you already
Yes,
alluded
touched
to.
on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first 3 are the ones that Pete just presented, and yes, they are using fund balance so that's the savings that have built up in the water sewer fund. At the end of 2019, we had $5 million in there, and we're working on closing out the 2020 fiscal year, but we're gonna add to that again. So anyway, these will come out of that amount. Now, the next section is the capital projects that were not completed at the end of 2020. So we roll them over into the current fiscal year. So Georgia has capital projects. They say capital projects are project length based, so it's not necessarily one fiscal year because capital projects can span multiple fiscal years. So, and this can't be part of the budget process either because we don't know what will be left, because we're making payments all the way through the fiscal year, and even in October, November, we might be making payments for work that was done in the prior fiscal year. So I can't bring this to you until we kind of know where the prior fiscal year settled, if that makes sense. So these are the amounts that are left on those projects. Most of them have an open PO. We're just rolling all that forward. How detailed do you want me to get right now?
No, I think you did a great job right
Okay.
there, and I want to stop. Because what you've explained to us is the first three sections are the items that Pete just brought to us, and then all of the rest of it are projects that were not funded at the end of the previous budget cycle, and they're rolling over. Is that
Funded, not complete. Oops.
not complete?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
So-
council, does anybody have any questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to make this consent 6. I'm back on the
I
track.
did
All
have
right,
one
let's let
question.
Mr. Carter ask a
Quickie.
question.
Okay, these things are enterprise fund type fund balance. I assume we keep those in separate packages as far as enterprise fund goes?
So yes, I have it grouped by fund. The first three are our 3 different SPLOS. And same thing, each fund has a fund balance, so the savings that have built up over the years. So in those 3 cases, it's SPLOS money that hadn't been spent in prior years.
Okay.
So for instance, the paving's a big one. We didn't do a big paving job last year, so we had rolled over all that cash to spend for this project going on, so.
All right, just want to make, because when we talk fund balance, we think of our big pot.
A big pot of money.
A big pot of money in the sky, and,
There's a bucket for each fund.
oh,
So-
good.
So
No-
depending on the type of fund it has its own fund balance.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, Tom, you've been jumping at the bit, so. What is it? Oh, yes, sir, it's consent 6. All right, F1, adoption of the pilot, which is the payment in lieu of taxes agreement related to Walton Communities project with Billerica Housing Authority, and I guess Mr. Mecklin will actually start us off.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. We tabled this matter at the last meeting, and it wasn't real clear direction, but from what I took from the comments, there were several key points that needed to be addressed with the folks that are planning to build the new development called Walton Trails. One of those points was to have a clear definition of what municipal services that the city would provide in return for the pilot payments, the payment in lieu of taxes. I have gotten a new draft, which I have not circulated to you, but will send out to you first thing in the morning, that does define what municipal services are. My observation of it is that it is a pretty benign list. It's providing water, roads, things that we provide normally to all citizens anyway. I didn't see anything in there that looked like it was a gotcha where they're trying to get us to pay for something that we wouldn't ordinarily provide to anybody. So that part, I believe, has been addressed, and I will send it to you. Second point was there was concern just about the age of the cooperation agreement, which is, as you realize, is now 60 years old. They said that, if we wanted them to, that they would prepare a new agreement that essentially says the same thing, that according to them, the same form of cooperation agreement has been used throughout the state of Georgia from 60 years ago until now, and it's not uncommon that the terms have really not changed. This pilot agreement is a 22-year agreement, so I wanted to be clear about that. The third big point that needed to be resolved, and I'm telling you it's not completely resolved yet, but this was Tom's concern, is the way it's written right now, they would be paying us a fixed amount, a little bit over $11,000 per year. That seems to be based on what the payment is right now. And from the city's standpoint should there be some type of escalation that goes along with that? If they were paying taxes, then the taxes would escalate with the value of the property going up year after year after year. And they acknowledge that is an issue and are willing to work with us to come up with an escalation clause. In the current cooperation agreement, there is a built-in escalation in that they are to be paying us 10% of whatever the shelter rents are, which is the gross rental for all the units. So that if the rental value of the units went up, then we would have an escalation based on that. But the one thing we don't have is a final agreement on how the pilot payments will escalate in the future. They've suggested that they'd be willing to escalate them 2% per year. I haven't had a chance to talk with Tom yet to figure out whether that makes more sense for us to do something along that lines, or whether we just go back to the original proposal that it be based on 10% of the shelter rents. So hopefully we can have an answer to that by Tuesday, but I don't have that today.
Okay. And I appreciate that follow-up, because you actually are hitting all of the points that we had brought up. Now, I was concerned with some infrastructure improvements that I had seen in a previous document, and wondered if this pilot agreement made any attempt to reference any other type of improvements that were done. You've said that you do not see that.
No.
I am comfortable with that. I am also comfortable myself, and we'll get to everybody in a minute, with the framework of what you've just given us in terms of the answers to the questions that were posed previously. While I would not want to put this on the consent agenda for Tuesday, I would think that we possibly could pass this out by Tuesday.
Yes.
That being the point, at this point, I will ask council if anybody has any questions. Mr. Young.
I'd hate to think that any of the 6.25 mill rate that we charge citizens of Villa Rica is not used for unessential services. So is the money that they're going to pay come close to that? Dick Chambers said the average unit value was going to be $184,000 for a one unit, for family, whatever. So, you figure that the number of units times the mill rate, that's a lot more than $11,000 a year.
And I guess the response to that, which is not going to sound like a good response, but under the state statute, they don't have to pay it anyway. So this is money that they're offering to pay, I think, almost as a sign of wanting to be a good citizen, as opposed to paying nothing at all, which by statute they're allowed to do.
Yeah, I know, I get that. I mean, it took a time for that to sink in on me too. I mean, I really don't have experience where someone does things just out of the generosity of their heart and for 22 years.
Right.
But you've expressed that same sentiment at least 3 times in this room. So I have now got it through my head that I'm getting the best I'm going to get, and I'm going to keep pushing to get a little more. But I think we're going to be at the end of that here pretty soon.
In the cosmic scale of justice and fairness, you're absolutely right. But under the law, which we're working under, something is better than nothing.
All right. Any
Mayor.
other council questions?
David.
Yeah. Oh,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Montahan.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Go ahead, Mr. Montahan.
Okay. I guess my only other thought was, is there anything in the agreement, or could it be interpreted to where we provide municipal services, which includes water and sewer, I presume?
Right.
Is there any way the agreement could be interpreted to where we don't have to charge them the water and sewer fees like any other customer?
No.
Okay. And that was just one of my holdups.
And I
there.
think somebody brought that up before.
Okay,
Ms.
so I'm
Person.
trying to get it into my head that we're getting it as a gift. But the concern that is that it's gone on for how many years now?
60 or more.
60 years. And I think our main point was the rate was still what it was then, and that didn't make sense. So if it's a percentage, if it goes up by a percentage to the rent, or do you feel pretty comfortable with that, Tom?
It's better than it not going up.
Well, he's going to need to get comfortable, but the
Yeah.
point is that you guys can work on this and have something for us to at least know about by Tuesday.
I think so.
But I get the point.
So,
Go ahead.
So I have 2 questions. One is the agreement that is proposed the first building or both buildings? And the second question is, what happens to the agreement that's in place? Because 4 of the 5 housing authority sites are not being impacted. So it looks to me like the current pilot stays in place, but the number of units just drops. Right?
That's right.
That's what he said.
I seem to recall a statement that Dick Chambers made that they would be consolidating people from the other housing areas into this area because it would have bigger capacity. No?
What I understood initially was that all 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess all 5 sites would be decommissioned.
That is what we thought
Right.
initially.
And
Yes.
then later I understood that it's only Walnut. Right? And that the other 4, the one behind the old library and the 3 on Anderson and Cleghorn, were all gonna stay in place.
I think that's right.
That's my understanding
That is
now.
not how.
That's not what I understood to
whoever
begin
said
with.
that.
I thought Dick said he didn't know what he was going to do with the properties after he consolidated all the people into this area.
I heard that too.
But that means they're empty, the
Right.
properties are empty. Could
I
be used for
was
something
So I don't
else.
think they are gonna be empty.
No, they're not. Well,
But-
there has been a number of stories, but what you're talking about is about them relocating the units they're gonna tear down, the occupants. He needed to make sure he had space if he needed it. Over here was what he explained to me at one time. I mean, I've had probably 3 or 4 different versions of this story.
So my understanding, and Bobby helped me, because you probably know these numbers better than I do, but they're building a phase 1 of 100 units and a phase 2 of 100 units. They're taking down 60 units, but of the 200 units, the housing authority is only gonna control 60. And the other 140 are gonna be controlled by Walton. That's my understanding.
Is that your understanding, Bobby? Because I know it's similar to that, but I didn't think it was. Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
so-
not what I was told today.
okay.
That it was related to me by somebody on the housing authority that they have entered into an agreement with Walton for the Walton Trails complex, and that the housing authority is going to own 60% of the Walton Trails community. I mean, they didn't break it down into number of units. It was 60%.
It'd be 120 then.
Yeah, that wouldn't be 60%.
And then,
Well, I heard 60 units, but maybe it was 60%. Or maybe I multiplied that times the first building and not both buildings, right?
Okay, yeah, that's possible there, because that is 60%.
And
60 of one of those is,
and then that they would own 100% of the remaining existing units, and we'd still be receiving payments in lieu of taxes on the remaining buildings not being torn
and I
down.
think that's what you relayed to me
Right.
already. Okay.
I can ask somebody from the housing authority to come and actually speak to that, because it sounds like that there's a lot of conflicting information out there.
I just think it'd be good if somebody did come in here and let us ask questions Tuesday.
Sure.
I mean,
I
I know
agree.
they want to get this out, and in large measure, we're close to doing it, but I just hate the fact that there just isn't clarity on enough of this to feel comfortable about it.
I'll ask somebody to be here.
All right, anybody else?
So
All right, Tom, one
I
more
had a
thing.
meeting by phone or Zoom or something with a couple of financial folks from Walton. And when I asked them about this process that we're trying to go through, what was conveyed to me was that they felt like the pilot agreement should be negotiated between the city and the housing authority, because they had not yet closed on the property and really had no standing. And I explained to them that the housing authority basically didn't talk to us. So how did they expect that to actually happen? And I didn't really get a response. So I think having the housing authority attend the meeting Tuesday might be enlightening.
I think that's true, but if it goes like the ones we've attended before, you're just in a circle, you're in a rabbit hole, and you really don't know what happened anyway. But I want them here, if they can be here. Anybody else? Okay. That being the case, I'm going to leave this item on the agenda. We'll take it up on Tuesday. Okay, let's move on to F2, proposed council meeting schedule for 2021. Tom?
All right, we, in my time here, have done multiple meeting structures. Last year, we did 2. And as I recall, when we put that in place, we said we'd take a look at that at the end of the year, and then based on how we felt about that, we'd decide what to do in 21. So what we're recommending is a 3rd schedule structure. Last time we moved from the 1st to the 2nd Tuesday. We're recommending that we stay on the 2nd Tuesday. We've tried prior Thursday work sessions and same day work sessions. We're recommending that we stay on the same day schedule, but that the 5 o'clock work session didn't give us enough time, so that we moved that back to 3. That would not only give us more time in here, but it would potentially give staff time to run out, make changes, and come back before the voting session. There is 1 month where a 2nd Tuesday doesn't work because of school, fall break. So October, we would recommend would be on the 1st Tuesday, which I realize may conflict with some other stuff. But one of the reasons we went to 2nd Tuesday was Carroll County Commission was on 1st Tuesday. So we're trying to stay off of that 1st Tuesday except for October. So as best as we can tell, we've tried to come up with something that nobody's going to like 100%, but that has something in here that was sort of what everybody was trying to do, either one day only, but have more time, and you got all that. So,
And this proposed schedule also breaks in June, is that correct?
no meeting in June.
And one of the thinking behind that is that it's during the summer and a lot of folks are out, including staff, and that since it has no impact on the taxpayer to call special called meetings, we could do that at any time and would do that for June if we needed to. Now, I have looked at this and it does seem like it's completely different than what we've done before, but I think it's workable. One of the things we run into is by doing these Thursdays and these Tuesdays, we impact productivity with staff 2 days as opposed to 1. And then I haven't seen that a lot gets done between Thursday and Tuesday that makes an impact. But let me open this up. This is the council schedule. So let's see if council has any questions or any input.
Yeah,
Mr. Carter.
I got a question. The reason that we do Thursday and Tuesday is it gives us a chance. Stuff always comes up during these work sessions that we like to get some clarity on before we vote on it. I think having a work session at 3 o'clock and a meeting at 6 o'clock is too close together. If it's going to be on the same day, I think the work session needs to be backed up a little bit. Give us a little time between meetings to clarify some stuff that we learn. Every work session has something unknown to us that pops up, every last one of them. So we need more time to clarify things before we vote on them if we're going to do it on the same afternoon.
Was this attachment already? I don't know how I missed that. Were these attached? I'm just now seeing them.
No, they were
Yes,
there.
okay.
Okay.
Mr. Young.
I assume that department heads and yourself won't mind a lot of questions ahead of time to help clarify some of the items before we actually get into the work session?
It's actually better for us.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Ms. McPherson.
I have some of the same problems Danny does. Now, for us, it means you come for an hour, you go somewhere. It may work out well when you're already down here working, but you don't do anything that afternoon, you don't do anything that evening because there's that gap. But when you really need to mull over things or you want to talk to people about them or get with staff or follow up, I think the Thursday, you still have time. Citizens have more time to respond to stuff they're concerned about. I feel like it's too compact. I've seen people change their mind on things a couple days later because they had time to mull it over. That doesn't happen when you have the work session and the meeting real close together. And staff may be able to go do what they need on some things. Other times, they're not gonna have enough time.
Okay, anybody else? I think that Mr. Carter's point should be considered because there is the opportunity to give a little bit more time between the meeting and the voting meeting and the work session. My only concern, and I think that it might be a concern for others, is those who have a job during the day. We picked that 3 p.m. because it would accommodate, but I'm willing to look at something different. Does anybody have any comments on that, on trying to move that up?
You made the comment that there's no cost to the citizens of Villa Rica for a special called meeting. If we run into a problem in a work session or in a regular meeting, we can always table it to a special called meeting
I understand
the
that.
next week and resolve the issues at no cost to the, and
think-
minimal input, minimal impact on department heads.
I
But
think
everybody
that
has to come
this
back.
tight of meeting is gonna result in a lot of tabling stuff, and that's gonna probably add more to the call meeting schedules.
But I think in our experience though, in the first half of this year, where we had a 5 o'clock work session, didn't lead to that.
That was the point I was gonna make, is that
So-
even when we did that, that didn't happen.
Right, and so I just, I don't mind doing an earlier work session in the morning, 10 a.m. or something like that, but that's fine. I just, and again, I don't mind doing them Thursday and then Friday, or excuse me, Thursday and then Tuesday, like we're doing them now. I'm pretty flexible. We can, make things happen or whatever it might be. But I'm just saying. All I wanted to say was that I just didn't think that our first half of the year experience led to a lot of tabling and things like that.
The first
But-
half of the year experience was torture because, and I don't think it was just for us, I think it happened to staff too. We had full agendas twice a month. It was almost impossible to go out of town and not be working, or to plan a vacation, because you had, every 2 weeks, you had another meeting and you needed to review an entire packet for that meeting. And we, pretty much most of the time, we were doing full agendas. It was, I even felt like we didn't cover things as well because, boom, another packet was out within the week of the time you just finished a meeting. You were looking at another packet within a week. Was that not right?
That Friday.
Yeah, you barely took a breath. That 2 meeting a month was.
But on this
Yeah,
schedule, we only
nobody's
have
recommending
one.
that.
Right, I mean,
I
you're
think-
absolutely correct.
Nobody but me.
The point we were
Yeah.
making, or I think that was being made, is that it didn't result in a lot of tabling of items. Mr.
Right. No,
Montman.
I think, but we don't have that case because I think we're going to go to the two with a work session and but we were doing 4 meetings a month. We're just doing 2 meetings a month.
So how many
compared to-
people up here do like the Thursday, what we're currently doing? How many people like what we've done the second half of the year?
Hold on just a
Oh,
second.
okay. Did I interrupt you?
No,
You
no,
didn't
no,
interrupt
I
me.
mean-
I guess you're gonna run it from down there. I'm not gonna take a poll. All right.
I
So,
don't have any-
does anybody want to make a suggested change to this? And we'll see if people want to do that.
I was merely attempting to see if there was some consensus for a certain
All right, does
type
anybody
of
want to
thing.
make a change to this?
I would like to recommend that we stick with the current schedule, but I'm not sure how to propose it, to not sound like I'm trying to run the meeting, when I'm just trying to find out where we are and if there's anybody else
Well,
that
if you
feels
just
the
make a
same.
motion, I'll find out if it's gonna work. But
Well-
if we're not gonna do that,
We
then
don't vote.
are you going to object to placing this on the consent agenda?
I
Is
think-
somebody going to object?
Yeah, I think I
Okay,
will.
we'll talk about it on Tuesday. I don't want to sit here and do this all day.
Right.
Okay, so we're not gonna find out how people feel. All right, okay.
That's exactly what that's all about. All right, let's move on to F3, appointment of members to the Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. Who's doing this one? Tom? Go ahead.
All right, so I want to say October or so, staff went to the DDA, who was also the CVB board, and asked them to consider voting to separate the DDA and the CVB into two boards. And they did so. So staff has now come back to council with a recommendation for board appointments to a new CVB board that would take effect on January the 1st. And the attachment shows who's replacing who and the term expirations. But basically, we're doing a staggered 1, 2, and 3 year expiration. They're just falling into place with the people that are currently seated. So if you want some information about any of those people, 3 of them are hotel personnel. Tracy's our new recreation director. Carl is on, I think, mandatory. He's on every board that we have and does most of the accounting and pays bills and stuff. Melissa's in the restaurant business and on court, and Debbie is a real estate agent.
I think there was some question about whether Carl would be willing to do this as well. He must have agreed to it. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions?
Come on,
Yeah,
Stan.
my only, I mean, I think this, well, first of all, my understanding is that we're also going to be, are we going to be looking at new bylaws as well? Maybe not tonight, but soon? Or maybe not this Tuesday, but soon?
I think we've got some. I need to go. I wasn't prepared for that question, but I think there are some bylaws for the Convention and Visitors Bureau
Okay.
already.
Because
and
the board,
That's not been our focus to change the bylaws, just to change the board.
yeah,
Okay.
we've got bylaws, and I'll send you a copy if you'd like to have one.
maybe we can include that in this packet.
Okay.
And then if there are any objections, somebody can pull this off the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions? Any more questions?
I have another question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, the other thing is, it just seems like we have term expire, I understand there's supposed to be staggered terms, but we have term expiration dates in June, and May, and March, and Octobers, and I mean, and Novembers. This seems like this might be a good opportunity to go ahead and stagger them and make them all December 31st terms, and then stagger them
Yeah,
while we're
I
doing
think
it.
we can do that. It's just make them all December 31st terminations.
Yeah, and then stagger them based on
You're the
that.
council. You can do most
Are
anything.
they, well, let me ask you a question. Is that already set as the December 31 for all of these, or are they all staggered? Okay.
Yeah, they're all different.
They're all
like,
over the place.
all over the place.
I like the idea of the December 31.
So if we did that, we would have 2 people expiring in 21, 2 in 22, and 3 in 23.
Okay.
I'm
well,
okay with that.
I
Yeah,
think that's
I'm
good.
just saying, make them uniform all December 31st.
Yeah, because I'm gonna
so-
tell you, when it's like on the housing board, when they're expiring in May and, you know,
Okay.
all through- I like that idea.
We can change that and just don't put it on consent. We'll
Yeah,
bring
let's
it-
not do
We'll
that.
bring it back modified.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so, yeah, we'll leave that item off of the consent so that we can get that cleaned up for Tuesday night. All right, let's move on to item number 4, discussion of the adoption redevelopment plan. Tom?
Okay, so we're getting down to the end of the process of establishing a tax allocation district. And it is part and parcel with the redevelopment plan. So I realize that the word redevelopment is getting used over and over in different phrases here, but we have redevelopment powers, which were made available to us by the state legislature that were approved in referendum. So redevelopment powers. So that's the thing that made it possible to vote. And the vote is what gave us the powers. Then you have a redevelopment agency, which the council has decided they will be, just like the Public Utilities Authority. So redevelopment powers, redevelopment agency. Then you have a redevelopment plan, and it can encompass one or more tax allocation districts. So in this case, it's a 1-to-1. And the first tax allocation district that we want to tackle is the Mirror Lake, what I call Mirror Lake Connectors. We got different names for it. The East Side TAD number 1, you know, take your pick. But we've given you a redevelopment plan, which I will be willing to bet lots of money we will modify multiple times between now and then as we get into the nitty-gritty of the road and we figure out what Scherner's doing, and then we figure out what the guys up near the hospital are doing, and as Dee builds his apartment complex, I mean, all that's gonna make this thing change. We could add or subtract parcels. We could decide to do the road differently or more road, and, I mean, there's just all kind of things that are gonna change potentially. We haven't really talked about whether we want to, in the plan, convert the Shoreline Punkintown traffic light to a roundabout. That will be a topic of conversation, I think, which might save us some money and make that work a little bit better. It would be a good traffic calming device, right, going down the ski slope there. So what we have before us tonight is a resolution adopting the plan and the associated district. So this is assuming, I think, that you have the redevelopment plan before you, which I know we didn't print or give to you, but is in the packet. So we're gonna approve the resolution, adopting the plan and the TAD. Monday night, we need to have a special call meeting and a public hearing for people to comment. Tuesday night, we need to vote to adopt the plan, so we can't put this on consent. And I wouldn't even mind having another public hearing Tuesday night, just because we'll have probably a greater attendance. So I would do an unrequired public hearing on Tuesday night, and then we vote. Once you do that, then letters go out. So we're gonna send a letter to the tax assessor asking for parcel values for all the values in the district. We're gonna send something to somebody at the state. Is that the DOR commissioner or somebody? This is all, you know, mandated by the state regs. But anyways, and then the unknown part is in January, we will begin to negotiate an intergovernmental agreement with the county and the school system, asking them to pledge their millage to the district, right? And that's a deal breaker, right, if they don't participate. So we need full participation by the county and the school system. What we're looking at now is a $10 million road that is gonna require maybe as much as a $200 million investment in the district. The apartment complex is gonna be in the 20 millions. David Scherner's piece to the east could be in the 50 to 100 million. The piece north of the apartments going up to the hospital might be in the 25 to 50 million range. And so getting the 200 is going to be difficult, but that's about what we need in investment in order to generate enough property tax to pay 10 million in bonds in 10 years, which would be the goal. All right, so this is, you know, this is just a piece of this process that we're talking about tonight. So questions, I know that's a lot, but.
Okay, so, what you want to do is, and we'll get to some questions, is you want to set up a special called meeting on Tuesday night to actually, I'm sorry, Monday night.
6 o'clock.
What, so you want to do it at 6 o'clock?
6
So do we
o'clock.
have time to advertise that?
It's been advertised.
It has? Oh,
Right, yeah,
nobody
we
said
had-
anything to me about it.
Yep, they just did it.
I got you, okay. All right, so council, do you have any questions for Tom on this?
Yeah, it's aimed at this place in yellow, is that what it is? This redevelopment plan is strictly aimed at that.
Right. And that's why I'm saying I'm confident we'll change it.
All right, any other questions?
Just real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
6 or 6:30?
Oh, we'll set
On
that.
Monday, I'm supposed to be somewhere else Monday night. I'm just trying to
Right.
remember.
So,
Or it starts at, okay, and this will be 6, and it probably won't be a long meeting. We're good. Okay,
Oh,
great.
no. I guarantee you it will not be. Okay, so does anyone have any objections to setting a special called meeting for Monday night at 6 p.m.? Okay, there are no objections, so let's set that meeting for Monday night at 6 p.m. Does anybody have any other questions on this tonight? So we will do a public hearing as well as a meeting on Monday night, and then you would also like, Alyssa, to add this item to the agenda for Tuesday night and add a public hearing there
Right.
too, even if it's not required,
Right.
just to give the opportunity.
yeah, there's
Okay.
no agenda item Monday night except the public hearing.
Okay.
That is the purpose
But
of the
this will-
special call meeting.
She'll add this to the agenda for that. Okay, all right. Are there any other questions on this? If not, I'm gonna move on. All right. Where's my, that is the last item on the agenda, so now let me ask if there are any public comments. All right, no public comments, so we'll close the public comment portion. Let me review the consent agenda, and then I'll have some final remarks. Okay, so let me read off this consent agenda, and then if anybody hears anything different, let me know at the end. Consent item number 1 will be the 2020 Main Street Advisory Board reappointments. Consent item number 2 would be the proposed 2021 holiday schedule. Consent number 3 is request for engineering services identified as addendum number 10 to water treatment plant improvements. Consent number 4, request for engineering services identified as addendum number 13 to water treatment plant improvements. Consent number 5, emergency installation of fire hydrants on Edge Road. Consent number 6, 2021 budget amendments. And that is all I have for the consent agenda. Anybody hear anything different? All right. Now, I've got a few items I need to hit here. This Saturday will be the 63rd anniversary of the downtown gas explosion in Villarica, and I want to remember those folks tonight. 63 years ago, on December the 5th, 1957, around 11 a.m., a natural gas leak under the building of Barry's Pharmacy in downtown Villarica caused an explosion that destroyed 4 buildings and damaged several other buildings in downtown Villarica. The explosion killed 12 people and injured at least 20 people. In terms of injury and loss of life, the explosion remains the most catastrophic event in Carroll County history. I'm going to read off the names of those who died that day. Margaret McCree Berry, Robert Lee Broom Sr., Dr. Hugh Jack Burnham Jr., Carolyn Davis, Johnny Marion Dyer, Olin Thomas Dyer, Kenneth Clifton Hendricks, James Oscar Hickson, Roselle Johnson, Robert Charles Roberts, that was the youngest person killed, age 13, Annette Pope Smith, and Carl Vittner. I think it's important that we remember these folks and the sacrifice of that day 63 years ago, this coming Saturday. The second item I want to talk about is this Saturday we will have our Christmas on Main event. We've been very fortunate as a number of communities around us, maybe no other community has been able to continue to hold their events, and we have been able to do that, and we will have our parade, singing, and the lighting of the Christmas tree. That is an annual event here in Villarica, and I'm glad that we're able to do that this Saturday. Also, I want to mention that CVS will be on site Saturday giving flu shots, and that will occur between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m., and I encourage everyone to go out for that. I want to, we're getting ready to close out 2020, and I'm glad. And I want to talk a little bit about 2021. one of the things we've done in 2020 is we invite special guests to lead us in the invocation and in the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to appeal to the public that if there are individuals that you would like to nominate to be able to do one of those two things, please contact the city clerk and give her those names so that she can work that out and see if we can get those folks on that calendar. I also want to highlight I got an email yesterday, and it was from a travel website that was highlighting the city of Villa Rica, and what it said across the header was 5 reasons to experience historic Villa Rica. And I wanted to pay kudos to Sharon and the folks who were involved in bringing those people here to Villa Rica so that they would highlight us. This particular travel site is travelawaits.com, and they receive more than 1 million visitors to their website every month? Every single month. And I thought that was worth highlighting, and I appreciate the work y'all are doing over there. I did find some of the 5 things. I decided to take a look at them, and none of them were related to the city government. Or me. But the number 1 was Pine Mountain Gold Museum, and it is always my pleasure to try to encourage people to come out and see what we have over there. They talked about how it was a literal gold mine, and I thought that was interesting. And then they talked about the history here, and the food, the glorious food, is how they worded it, and they highlighted Evans and Uncorked and the other side. So I thought that was worth mentioning here today. The city clerk has brought it to my attention that today Georgia Power is installing additional light fixtures at Hillcrest Cemetery. The local funeral homes had requested this for late evening funerals, and we have had vandalism with some of the graves. I want to thank the Villa Rica Garden Club for funding this project. The Garden Club continues to assist the Cemetery Commission with beautification projects at the cemetery. We don't often enough talk about the work that the clerk does with regard to the cemetery, but it's actually a lot of what she does, and that gets missed quite often. So I wanted to thank you for that and for bringing that to my attention. I wanted to say something else that comes to my mind, and Tom's giving me a hand signal, but let me go back to I got to get back to my list. You threw me off. The chief has asked me to remind everyone that they are still taking donations for Shop with a Cop. Is that what you wanted to? Okay. Well, good. I have that on my list here. I wanted to highlight 2 individuals here tonight, though, who don't know that I'm going to highlight them. And the first one is Mr. David Mecklin, who is participating in the Parks and Rec 100-mile challenge. And only a few months ago, he couldn't make it 100 feet, and now he is just walking up a storm, and we're glad to see you out doing that, David. Glad to have you back here healthy. And I wanted to recognize Michael Young, because every week when I write that little newsletter, I see that look. I write that newsletter, and when I go through and review it, they send me a copy to review. Guess what I always see for the golden business of the week? Councilman Young standing there as a supporter and representing the city. And I just wanted to say I think the businesses downtown appreciate you doing that. I show up to some, but I don't show up to nearly the number he does, and I just wanted to say I appreciate that.
That old habit from being on the Main Street board.
Well, whatever excuse you got, that'll do. Okay, let me see what else I had here. I did want to highlight that our police officers did detain and capture an escapee that had escaped from Athens, Clark County. One of our officers had spotted the vehicle he had stolen and was in. They approached him, and he took off running, so our officers are in well enough shape that they were able to catch him on foot, and we appreciate the work our police officers do. And then the final thing is that some of you may know, if you've been keeping up, that the face covering order expired, and I did renew that on Monday, and I want to read a statement about that, and then you can get a copy of it. The city clerk has it. They'll post it. On July 9th, 2020, and again on September 29th, 2020, I announced orders requiring face masks to be worn by city staff and all persons entering upon and into city-owned property. At the time of the most recent order, the state of Georgia had 315,000 positive cases and more than 6,971 deaths. As of December 1st, positive cases were up to 428,980, and the deaths were up to 8,830. The CDC and the overwhelming medical community continue to insist that wearing face coverings is the best preventative measure that can be taken, and they urge that face covering policies remain in place. The conditions which warranted the original and subsequent orders have not been abated. Therefore, I'm announcing tonight that I have issued on Monday, November 30th, an extension of those orders through February 28th, 2021. For additional information, please refer to the executive order that will be posted to the city's website. I know that there are differing opinions to some extent on these coverings, but my goal here is good. It is to do everything I can to keep the city employees safe and to do it in a manner that is consistent with people showing their own level of responsibility. Here, that responsibility lies with the leadership, and therefore I will still take that action. Is there any other comments tonight, Tom? Mr. Mecklin? Any council members? If not, we'll be adjourned.